Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. The snow phoenix rose straight into the sky, reaching up to the height of 10,000 meters in the high skies. In a blink of an eye, they had already left the boundaries of Blue Wind Imperial City. Yunche took out the map of the profound sky continent which King Yu had prepared for him, and estimated the distance between Blue Wind Imperial City and Divine Phoenix City. The territory of Divine Phoenix Empire was huge, it was nearly 20 times the size of the Blue Wind Nation. Even if the Snow Phoenix were to fly 15 to 16 hours per day with its speed, it would still take a dozen of days before reaching Divine Phoenix City. It's actually this far. Yunche groaned in a low voice. He had initially thought by setting out a month in advance, he would be considered to have incomparably sufficient time, and would still have ample time to move around in Divine Phoenix City. However, since he had never seen the map of the profound sky continent before, he had evidently misjudged the distance between Blue Wind Imperial City and Divine Phoenix City. After staring at the territory of Divine Phoenix Empire for a short while, Yunche's gaze once again returned to Blue Wind Empire. After stopping his eyes at the southwestern lands for a short while, he fixed on a single spot. He let out a single strange cold laugh, closed the map, and then flew at wind-breaking speed. With Sorrow South Mountain at the back, and the South Sky River on the right, the location of the main branch of Xiao sect was an impeccably treasured piece of land blessed by feng shui. 3,000 meters in the high sky, Yunche could clearly see that arched stone gate at the front of Xiao sect. This stone gate was more than 300 meters in height, and the word, Xiao, that was carved at the very top, had a majestic look, with an extraordinary domineering aura. This sure is a good place. Yunche muttered out. Riding the Snow Phoenix, he sped downwards. When he was approaching the stone gate in the sky, he leapt down, and with his dragon fault pulled out, he smashed onto the stone gate with a single strike. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion rang throughout the entire Sorrow South Mountain. Following after, Dragon Fault let out a sky-trembling dragon cry, and the millennium-old Great Gate of Xiao sect trembled intensely under the explosive cry. Countless cracked lines grew at extreme speed, and in a blink of an eye, they densely filled the entire Great Gate. Subsequently, the gigantic stone gate, under the thunder-like explosive sound, crashed down. Boom 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 boom. The sound of the collapsing gigantic stones could not escape anyone's ears. The sand and dirt that was swept up filled the skies and covered the earth. Yunche descended from the sky, his face was filled with a cold smile, and this action of his had undoubtedly forced out the hornets from their nest. The initially quiet Xiao sect instantly rang their alarm bells, and sounds of chaotic footsteps came flocking over. They looked on with widened eyes at the great gate which represented Xiao sect's reputation and millennium history, actually crashed down just like that, turning into shattered stones which littered the ground. None of them did not have ghastly pale faces. Who is it? Who dares to act wildly in my Xiao sect? Xiao Juetian's furious voice came from the sky. As sect master, he did not even bother to appear before everyday trifle affairs. However, their sect's gate was suddenly destroyed. This was a grave matter which was related to Xiao sect's millennium-long honor. Xiao Juetian flew over. Like an eagle, he charged to the very front. With his palm pushed forward, a windstorm made of profound energy came sweeping over, blowing away the sand and dirt that filled the sky, which revealed the culprit, Yunche's figure. Sect Master Xiao, it's been a few months since we last met, I hope you're fine. Yunche looked at Xiao Juetian whose beard was about to flare up from anger, and said with a face full of smiles. Yunche. The moment he saw Yunche's face clearly, the face which Xiao Juetian saw was no different from that of a demon's. His entire face twitched intensely, and even more so, an explosion sounded in his mind. The surging fury in his heart, as though something incomparably heavy was tightly suppressing it, was no longer able to erupt out. His suppressed chest looked as though it was about to explode. When the elders and disciples of Xiao sect, that came rushing quickly over from the back, heard the two words, Yunche, their expressions greatly changed. Tardiness even began to show in their wild sprinting footsteps. Yunche kept Dragon Fault and walked towards Xiao Juetian unhurriedly. Slowly and leisurely, he said. Back then in the Imperial Palace, Sect Master Xiao had personally participated in my great wedding. I'm really endlessly grateful for it, so, on the spot, I promised to personally pay a visit to Xiao Sect some other day. I will definitely fulfill the words I, Yunche, have said. Hence, the reason I'm here today. I saw this great gate of your esteemed sect from afar. It's very majestic, a rare sight in the country. Hence, I wanted to land on top of this great gate and overlook the entire view of Xiao Sect. However, I didn't expect that this great gate was actually this brittle. The moment I stepped on it, it immediately collapsed. It even gave me a big shock. Oh, for accidentally trampling the great gate of your esteemed sect, I hope that Sect Master Xiao do not take offense to it. The great gate of Xiao Sect had a millennium-long history, and had experienced countless of storms and winds. How could it possibly be trampled? Yunche, who had destroyed this great gate which was 300 meters in height, actually casually mentioned, do not take offense to it. Xiao Juetian's blood pressure surged upwards on the spot, and even his organs were about to explode. If any other person was in front of him, even if he was Ling Yifeng, he would still desperately charge out. However, the person who was standing in front of him was someone he could not afford to offend. He also secretly vowed long ago to definitely not be in conflict with Yunche, even if his dignity was stepped on by Yunche. Because, not only were his abilities terrifyingly strong, he was a maniac who had annihilated the entire Burning Heaven clan, who even dared to give the Divine Phoenix Prince a harsh beating. On the day of Yunche's great wedding 4 months ago, Yunche seemed to have casually said that he would definitely pay a visit to Xiao Sect some other day. These words had caused Xiao Juetian to have sleepless nights for half a month. Now that a good few months had passed, his heart had basically managed to put the matter to rest. But in the end, Yunche still came. Xiao Juetian squeezed out a smile that was even uglier than a crying expression on his face. It's actually little brother Yun. It's no wonder 100 flowers had bloomed this morning in my sect's medicine garden. It's actually because of the arrival of an esteemed guest. My Xiao sect is really graced and honored. This great gate had existed for 1,000 years as well, and it had long been neglected for many years. I never expected that it would actually collapse at this moment and even startled my esteemed guest, so we should be the ones apologizing. Little brother Yun, come, hurry in. Allow this humble Xiao to somewhat act as a host for your visit. The Millennium Great Gate which represented the reputation of the sect was destroyed, yet they still had to apologize to the culprit. The faces of all the elders and disciples of Xiao sect were completely red. In the sect's great assembly, Xiao Juetian had emphasized countless times to not make an enemy out of Yunche, and to never ever offend the people around Yunche. Today, they had personally witnessed Xiao Juetian's attitude. Evidently, his fear of Yunche had far surpassed their imaginations. Oh, Yunche's eyes slightly narrowed. Shui Juetian's ability to take setbacks had truly reached the pinnacle. He was still actually able to face such offense and provocation with a smile on his face, and even apologized. As expected of someone who was able to become the sect master of Xiao sect. Yunche slowly spoke up. There's no need to head in. The reason why I'm here today is simply for a single matter. Xiao Juetian hurriedly said. I wonder what little brother Yun needs? If this humble Xiao is able to help, this humble Xiao will definitely give it his all. This matter, to Sect Master Xiao, is simply a breeze. Yunche said with a light smile. I wish to meet a person in your Xiao sect. Xiao Juetian's heart instantly let out a fierce, badump sound. He forcefully calmed himself. I wonder who's the person little brother Yun wishes to meet. Xiao Kuan Yun. Yunche half narrowed his eyes, and there was not a single change to the expression on his face. Although he had long foreseen the appearance of this day, when it really came, Xiao Juetian's heart was still twitching, and the many elders and disciples behind him had changes in their expressions as well. Currently, no one in the entire Xiao sect was unaware of what Xiao Kuanyin had once done to Yunche in the past. The retribution that should be brought upon him, in the end, had still arrived. With Yunche's brutal method of directly annihilating the entire Burning Heaven clan, all of them did not dare to imagine just how Xiao Kuanyin would end up after he were to land in Yunche's hands. However, no matter what, Xiao sect would definitely not go against Yunche because of Xiao Kuan-Yun. Burning Heaven clan, which was already annihilated, was a lesson taught with dripping, fresh blood. Sect Master, what should we do? Xiao Buyan arrived next to Xiao Juetian. With a worried expression, he said with a low voice. The color of Xiao Juetian's face quickly changed. In the end, he fiercely gritted his teeth, and with a voice sufficiently loud enough to spread throughout half of the entire Xiao sect, he roared out. Have this unfilial son, Xiao Kuan-Yun, pulled out here now. Be you. But Xiao Juetian's reaction had caused Xiao Buyan to be at a loss for a moment. He had initially thought of whether they should make up a story of Xiao Kuan-Yun not being in the sect, or he already being expelled from the sect, to thus try to see if they could escape from this tribulation. He never expected that Xiao Juetian would actually be this decisive. Everyone in Xiao sect knew that among Xiao Juetian's 4 sons, the one he pampered the most was his youngest son Xiao Kuan-Yun. He was also the only son who had been born by his official wife. However, facing this Yunche in front of him, who was as terrifying as a demon itself, Xiao Juetian basically did not dare to put any faith in luck. He even incomparably wished to end everything as quickly as possible. No matter if it was a good or bad outcome, at the very least, he would no longer have to live a life in constant fear. He once again growled. No buts. Hurry and have him scram out here. If he doesn't come, if there's a need to drag him, then drag him over. Not long later, the people of Xiao sect at the back scattered apart. Xiao Kuan-Yun staggered his steps and was forcefully pulled over by a Xiao sect elder. Then, he was pushed in front of Xiao Juetian. With unsteady feet, Xiao Kuan-Yun instantly fell onto the ground. When he raised his head, he instantly saw a face that was a little familiar. After being stunned for a moment, his face instantly turned ashen. Yunche. Xiao Kuan-Yun's hair was slightly ruffled, and his complexion was a little yellow. Evidently, he wasn't really well off in this period of time. Because, ever since the annihilation of Burning Heaven clan, and finding out that Yunche was that Xiaoche he did not put in his eyes that year and had even almost forgotten about, he had been living within a nightmare every single day. Currently, the moment he recognized Yunche, it was as though he suddenly saw the devil of his dreams in broad daylight. He was frightened to the point where he had almost lost control of his bowels on the spot. Oh, great young Master Xiao, it's been 3 years since we last met, yet you're actually still able to remember me, a small figure in the Xiao clan of Floating Cloud City. I sure am honored. Yunche looked at Xiao Kuan-Yun and lightly gave a cold laugh. 3 years ago, his hatred for Xiao Kuan-Yun had sunk deep into his bones. He hated that he was unable to grind his bones and scatter his ashes. However, currently, facing this person who was crawling on the ground like a dog, whose face was filled with fear, he was not furious, nor did he have the thrill of being able to collect the debt Xiao Kuan-Yun owed him that year. There was simply only a faint feeling of sorrow. That's right. He could only blame himself back then for being too useless. A figure like him that could not even be compared to trash was actually able to force him out of his own home, and caused grandfather and little aunt to suffer 3 years of bitter isolation. If back then, Chu Yueli was not present, the outcome would have been even more unbearable. Now that he recalled it, it seemed like he should still thank this Xiao Kuan-Yun. If not for him, he would not have thirsted for power so intensely, and there wouldn't be the Yunche today. And even now, he no longer held the interest in killing him. What kind of figure was he right now? The son-in-law of the Blue Wind Emperor, and even more so, he had the title of Blue Wind's #1, which was enough to fully control the sect master of Xiao sect, Xiao Juetian. In front of Yunche, even he was extremely respectful, and did not dare to burst out in anger. In front of him, this Xiao Kuan-Yun could not even be considered as poop. Killing him would simply stain his own hands, and insult his own status. Although Yunche only possessed earth-profound strength, his might was deep and heavy. Even Xiao Juetian might not be able to endure it, let alone Xiao Kuan-Yun. Under Yunche's pressure and gaze, his face had already turned ashen, as he tumbled and crawled to the back. Don't kill me. That year. It isn't my fault that year. Those were all Xiao Yulong's idea. It doesn't concern me. It doesn't concern me. I know. Yunche said with incomparable calm. Naturally, I knew everything Xiao Yulong had done. Hence, I tore his arm and leg muscles, gouged out his eyes, ripped off his ears, cut off his nose, sliced off his tongue, wrenched out all of his hair, broke his arms and legs, and crippled his humanity. And at the same time, left his life intact, allowing him to perfectly live on. I allowed him to die slowly, bit by bit, in hell. Ah, Xiao Guanyin let out a strange cry filled with extreme horror, his 4 limbs wildly trembled. Between his thighs, yellowish-white liquid flowed down the ground. When they heard of Yunche's brutal method, even those elder-level individuals, who had experienced countless of storms and winds, were stricken in terror, with chills running down their entire bodies. This was clearly a method which only the most brutal of demons would possess. Dad? Save me. Save me. I don't want to die. Dad? Save me. Save me. Xiao Guanyin tightly hugged onto Xiao Juetian's thigh. His entire body was trembling, his 4 limbs had long gone limp under intense fear, and he was unable to stand up at all. As a young master of Xiao sect who usually enjoy an extravagant life, undoubtedly, he was extremely afraid of death. However, in the past, there had never been anything that could cause him to feel the threat of death, there were simply only people that feared him. Xiao Juetian looked at his own son who was actually frightened to the point he had lost control of his bowels. His upright expression turned purple, wishing that he could kick him away. However, he was after all his own biological son, and he was even his most loved one. No matter what, he was unable to stand still and look at him die in Yunche's hands. He took a deep breath, and said to Yunche with a cupped fist, "Little brother Yun, this humble Xiao clearly knows about the grudge between you and my unfilial son as well. That year, my unfilial son had set up a despisable ugly incident, however, at least, little brother Yun and your esteemed family are all safe and sound. The sin of my unfilial son cannot be considered to one that results in death either. I request that little brother Yun, as a great man, be broad-minded, and spare my unfilial son. This humble Xiao will definitely remember this gratitude by heart, and will definitely greatly repay you. His sin shouldn't result to death." Yunche let out a cold laugh. "Then, do you know why Burning Heaven clan annihilated? In comparison, their sin is actually much lighter compared to your son's. However, in the end, from their Grand Clan Master Fen Ijue, Clan Master Fen Duanhuan, to all of the clan's disciples with the surname Fen, a total of about 70,000 lives, all of them died without any burials." Yunche's words caused the hearts of everyone in Xiao sect to clench. Some of their bodies even began to quiver uncontrollably, and even Xiao Juetian's expression had turned terribly pale. He was very clear in his heart that when he headed to Yunche's wedding a few months ago, compared to the strength Yunche had used to annihilate Burning Heaven clan, it had once again increased by an extreme amount. With his incomparably terrifying growth speed, his current strength was definitely even more unfathomable. Annihilating his entire Xiao sect was completely sufficient. After all, Xiao sect's strength was comparable to Burning Heaven clan's. If he were to really act against the entire Xiao sect out of fury, this worst-case scenario had been thought of many times by Xiao Juetian. Currently, finally facing Yunche who was here to collect his debt, he no longer dared to think any further. He lowered his posture to the very lowest, and pleaded. "Little brother Yun, the error of my unfilial son, indeed cannot be forgiven. This humble Xiao is extremely shameful for my incapabilities in teaching my son. However, with your current status and level, no matter how many tens of times stronger my unfilial son is, it's impossible for him to possess even the least bit of threat to you, nor would it be possible for him to dare offend you again. If you act against my unfilial son, I'm afraid. I'm simply afraid that it might stain your status as well. If you can show mercy today, and let go of my unfilial son, my Xiao sect will definitely deeply grateful, and will rever little brother Yun as our lord. As long as it's little brother Yun's instruction, my Xiao sect will definitely use all the might within our capacity, and will definitely not hesitate to sacrifice our lives." Although in his words, Xiao Juetian was pleading for Xiao Guanyin. Everyone knew that he was pleading for the entire Xiao sect. With Burning Heaven clan as the prime example, Yunche definitely had the possibility of annihilating Xiao sect under his fury. After all, the thing which Xiao Guanyin had done back then, compared to what Burning Heaven clan had done, had offended Yunche even more. After all, although Yunche's two relatives were kidnapped by Burning Heaven clan, they were immediately rescued, and they were completely unscathed. However, Xiao Guanyin had actually caused Yunche to be chased out of his own home, and even caused his two relatives to be isolated for 3 whole years. And Xiao Juetian basically did not dare to believe his own ears when he heard Yunche's next words. "Amen. What sect Master Xiao says seems to have a good point. If I were to kill this son of yours, not only will it stain my own hands, I will indeed gain nothing. And if I don't kill him," Yunche held onto his chin, showing a thinking look. Xiao Juetian felt as though he had heard the words of the heavens. These words Yunche just spoke out, actually clearly stated that he wanted to let go of Xiao Guanyin, and let go of Xiao sect. However, naturally, he must have a huge benefit to gain. At this point, Xiao Guanyin's death had long been secondary, the main key was Xiao sect's safety. If they were able to use sufficient benefits to stabilize this death god, and had Xiao sect escaped from the shadows of this death god, then no matter what price it was, he could still accept it. After all, no matter how big the price was, it was 1,000, 10,000 times better than Xiao sect's annihilation. As long as little brother Yun is willing to let go of my unfilial son, even if you wish for my Xiao sect to climb up a blade mountain or swim in a cauldron of oil, our Xiao sect will never hesitate either. Xiao Juetian anxiously said. Sect Master Xiao is being too serious. How could I, a mere junior, have the mighty Xiao sect climb up a blade mountain or swim in a cauldron of oil for me? This son of yours, I can decide not to kill him, but Yunche half narrowed his eyes. That will depend on how much your Xiao sect is willing to buy his life for. Money? Xiao Juetian was slightly stunned. Never would he have expected that what Yunche wanted, as stated in his words, was actually money. However, immediately, he reacted over. Evidently, Yunche was currently already on his way to Divine Phoenix Empire, and the Divine Phoenix Empire has the main branch of Black Moon Merchant Guild, and even more so, it has countless of unique treasures which Blue Wind Empire was unable to hope to attain. To obtain these items, the most important factor was to have sufficient gold. If this hidden crisis, which could annihilate their entire sect, could be eliminated just by purely using money, Xiao Juetian was naturally overjoyed. However, he was unable to ascertain if the amount Yunche wanted was an astronomical figure that their Xiao sect was basically unable to afford. He held his breath, and asked with incomparable caution. I wonder. How much money must our Xiao sect pay, in order to buy my unfilial son's life? Yunche looked at Xiao Juetian, and slowly stretched out a single finger. Xiao Juetian's heart was instantly lifted. With incomparable caution, he asked. 10,000 purple profound coins. 10,000 purple profound coins was 100 million yellow profound coins, an astronomical figure that a family of commoners with a poor lifestyle in Blue Wind would never dare to hope for. Yunche smiled coldly. Your son's life is merely worth 10,000 purple profound coins. It's 10 million. 10 million. Purple profound coins. What? As a Lord-class figure in Blue Wind, when Xiao Juetian, whose mental endurance ability could not be compared by a regular person's, heard this figure, he still lost control of his voice on the spot out of shock. The Xiao sect disciples behind had even been shocked completely senseless by this figure. 10 million, and it was even purple profound coins. That was 1 billion cyan profound coins, 100 billion yellow profound coins. What? This reaction of yours. Are you thinking that your son's life isn't worth this amount of money? Yunche lightly said. Xiao Juetian said with a pained voice. For little brother Yun to give my unfilial son a chance to live, this humble Xiao is eternally grateful. It's just that 10 million purple profound coins, this figure, my Xiao sect's business is small, it's really. You'd best not tell me that your Xiao sect isn't able to afford it. Yun Che's dark and measuring voice interrupted Xiao Juetian's words. If you're telling me that a sect which had accumulated 1,000 years of wealth isn't even able to take out 10 million purple profound coins, then that's insulting my intelligence. Your son's life, naturally, isn't worth this amount of money, then, is your Xiao sect worth 10 million, Xiao Juetian's heart suddenly clenched, and his breathing had even stopped for a moment. Cold sweat instantly filled his entire forehead. Xiao sect was indeed capable of taking out 10 million purple profound coins. With Xiao sect's abilities, power, and influence, its yearly income was always an astronomical figure. However, at the same time, Xiao sect's expenditure was immense as well. In order to maintain the flourishing of Xiao sect's power, every year, an immense amount had to be spent to raise the people of Xiao sect. In regards to those talented geniuses, or the young generation with unique statuses, there was an even bigger need of an extremely large investment. While after deducting the expenditure from the income, the surplus Xiao sect had every year, was merely a few 10,000s of purple profound coins. The moment Yun Che opened his price, he actually asked for 10 million purple profound coins. That was wealth that Xiao sect had to use a few dozen years to save up for. However, currently, facing this astronomical figure, Xiao Juetian definitely did not dare to utter a single no, nor did he even dare to show a hint of hesitation. Because Yun Che had clearly used the entire Xiao sect as his threat. He glanced at Xiao Kuan-Yun below him. His chest was swelling up to the point of bursting, and blue veins were popping out on his entire body, as though he really wished to personally rip Xiao Kuan-Yun into shreds. He hated himself for overly pampering this youngest son of his, for allowing him to actually turn into good-for-nothing who treated lust as his life. In the end, he brought about such a monstrous crisis. As the father of Xiao Kuan-Yun, he no longer had the face to continue being the sect master either. Xiao Juetian heaved a long sigh, and said, "If little brother Yun will be willing to become friends with my Xiao sect with this 10 million, then my Xiao sect. Never mind the thing about becoming friends. I, Yun Che, am just a small figure who came from the small city of Floating Cloud. How would I dare to become friends with the great Xiao sect? But, regarding this grudge, I can forget about it. As long as you don't let me see this Xiao Kuan-Yin person ever again, I can treat everything as it has never happened. Including that Xiao Wui, whom I have accidentally killed." When Yun Che's final words came out, the expressions of all the people of Xiao sect gravely changed. Xiao Juetian's spirit, had even more so, turned cold. He no longer dared to say any further words, turned around, and transmitted his voice to the elder behind him. Immediately. No matter what methods you use, in 15 minutes, put together 10 million purple profound coins and send them here. Go, immediately. The elder immediately nodded. He did not dare to say anything more, and quickly left. Not even 8 minutes had passed, yet he had already hurried back, and in his hands, he was holding onto a purple gold card which was shimmering with purple light. With a wealth of 100 billion in his hands, even the hands of this elder, who had experienced a century of weathering, were trembling constantly, as though he was carrying a 15 million kilogram mountain. Yun Che reached out his hand, and instantly pulled that purple gold card into his hands. Then, used his consciousness to sweep through the amount inside. There were exactly 10 million purple profound coins inside, not a single bit was missing. To the 4 major sects of Blue Wind Empire, this was an absolute astronomical figure, let alone a single person. If not because he still had to face a large group of people from Xiao sect, Yun Che wouldn't have been able to resist raising his head and laughing out maniacally. With this amount of money, even in the Divine Phoenix Empire, it was still sufficient for him to squander all he want. A trash's life could actually reap him such benefits. It really was a good deal. Actually, in the beginning, he had never thought of annihilating Xiao sect. Although Xiao sect similarly had overstepped his boundaries, the two were different. Over at Xiao sect's side, the one who harmed him, the one who harmed his grandfather and little aunt, was Xiao Kuan-Yin alone. It was unlikely for him to be furious at the entire Xiao sect just because of him. However, Burning Heaven clan was different. Abducting his family, and not hesitating all costs to send him to death, were decisions made by the upper echelons of the entire clan. They even did not hesitate to force him to his tolerable limit time and time again. If he did not annihilate the entire sect, there was an extremely likely possibility that they would bite him back again in the future. However, for the Xiao sect, no matter the case, their attitude was still fine. And their guts had already been broken by fear. They definitely would not dare to go against him. Yunche kept the purple gold card, and then, he suddenly pushed out his palm. With a dull bang, Xiao Kuangyun was sent flying in the sky. He spat out fresh blood in midair, and when he landed, he was already unconscious. Yuna. Although Xiao Juetian was extremely furious at Xiao Kuangyun, he was, after all, still his own son. He hurriedly charged over, saw that Xiao Kuangyun's body was already covered entirely in blood, and an unknown number of his bones had been broken. While Yunche had already rode on the snow phoenix and rose into the skies. In the air, his arrogant voice rang out. Don't worry, he won't die. He simply has to spend his days on the bed in the next few months. Also, from this point onwards, he shouldn't think of ever procreating. A dog trash like him is unworthy of having descendants. Your Xiao sect best not allow him to step out of the doors of Xiao sect forever. If I were to see his face again, then you people can simply take out more money to redeem his life. The snow phoenix's speed was extremely quick. Yunche's voice quickly faded away in their ears. Xiao Juetian swayed forward, and fiercely spat out a mouthful of blood. Sect Master! The surrounding elders hurriedly circled around him. Who? I'm fine. Xiao Juetian rubbed away the traces of blood at the corner of his lips. Waving his hands, he closed his eyes, and said powerlessly. This is fine as well. At least, the safety of Xiao sect is guaranteed. I can finally sleep peacefully. Have Yuna carried over to Elder Wuji's place? Divine Phoenix sect was the biggest sect within the Profound Sky continent. Even though its overall strength was a bit inferior to that of the four great sacred grounds, based on its scale, no sect in the entire Profound Sky continent could reach its size. It was also the only sect in the Profound Sky continent that was qualified to challenge the four great sacred grounds. At the same time, Divine Phoenix sect possessed the only specialty within the continent. It was a sectoral force, and also an imperial force. The Divine Phoenix sect had two core bases, one was Phoenix City, the other was the Divine Phoenix Imperial Palace. And the entire outer branches of the sect extended throughout all of the Divine Phoenix nation. Without exception, it was this region's overlord. Divine Phoenix sect unquestionably possessed the strongest force within the Profound Sky 7 nations, as well as the highest of political power. Furthermore, these two aspects were both overwhelming. The other 6 nations gave the Divine Phoenix Empire secret offerings, all without exception, especially the weakest Blue Wind nation. Divine Phoenix Imperial Palace. Feng Hengkong, a name known to everyone that thoroughly resounded through the Profound Sky with prestige above the world. Because he was currently sect master of the Divine Phoenix sect, and also the emperor of the Divine Phoenix Empire. He possessed an unrivaled profound strength. The power he held in his palms covered the entire Profound Sky. He was like a figure from the legends in the hearts of Profound Sky's people. To the other 6 nations, an emperor was already an unapproachable existence. An emperor Feng Hengkong of Divine Phoenix far surpassed their own nation's emperor. He was like an emperor of the heavenly imperial court. As long as they merely thought of his name, they would all feel a kind of deep oppression. In the other 6 nations, the monarch's main hall was surrounded by a massive guard force and countless peak experts would be guarding it in secret. It was the place that had the tightest security in the entire imperial palace. But the Divine Phoenix main hall, where Feng Hengkong was located, was actually a field of quiet. There were fundamentally no guards in the surroundings, even so much that the imperial palace patrolling bodyguards would take care to avoid this place. In another nation's imperial palace, this was an absolutely unimaginable scenery. But in the Divine Phoenix Imperial Palace, this couldn't be any more ordinary. What a joke! Feng Hengkong was not merely an emperor, he was sect master of Profound Sky's #1 sect, Divine Phoenix sect. What kind of strength was that? With his strength, why would there be a need for him to be protected others? In the entire Profound Sky, how many people were even qualified, even able to protect him? In the entire Profound Sky, how many would even have the guts, or are even able to charge into the Divine Phoenix Imperial Palace? Divine Phoenix Main Hall. With hands behind his back, Feng Hongkong focused his gaze at the Phoenix totem on the wall. His gaze was single-mindedly concentrated, as if he was pondering over something. An emperor's attire was usually a golden-yellow color, embroidered with a five-clawed dragon, yet Feng Hongkong's imperial robe was a fire-red color, embroidered with a heaven-scorching phoenix. He was over 150 years old this year, but his entire person was unnecessarily white, with not the slightest of wrinkles. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. With his majestic heroic air, it seemed that he was at most 40 years of age. With his cultivation level, if not for him waiting to appear with a prominent monarch's demeanor and wanting manifest a difference in seniority between his children, he could easily maintain an appearance of around 20 if he wanted to. Altogether, he had a total of 16 children, 15 were sons and 1 was a daughter. His eldest son Feng Shiming was already a full 100 years old, while his youngest daughter just became 16 this year. And the 13th son was exactly the Feng Shichen who had been violently beaten by Yun Che. It took a long while for a change to at last appear in Feng Hongkong's eyes. He didn't turn around, and suddenly said indifferently, "Minga, what is it?" It was not known when, but a 30 or so middle-aged age in a red robe appeared behind him. When he came over, he did not make the slightest of noise. He had been standing behind Feng Hongkong's back for quite some time now, but still did not make the slightest of sound, for fear that he would disturb him. Now that he finally heard Feng Hongkong talk, the middle-aged man immediately bowed and said, "This son greets Royal Father. This son came here to report 2 things to Royal Father." Feng Hongkong turned around. As valiant as a mountain, his calm and dignified face did not show any emotion as he spat out 2 extremely indifferent words, "Go on." "Yes, Father." As Feng Hongkong's eldest son, Feng Shiming was also the young sect master of the Divine Phoenix sect, and Divine Phoenix Empire's crown prince. It was clear that he still possessed an extreme reverence toward Feng Hongkong. No matter his posture or words, they all followed the standard regulations. No daring to appear impudent, he slightly lowered his head. "The first matter is actually only a small matter, and is not worthy of troubling Father. But this matter is related to 13th brother, so this son is hesitant in whether or not he should mention it to Royal Father." HMPH. Feng Hongkong's brows slightly tightened. "As my Divine Phoenix's crown prince, when did you become so irresolute, so indecisive? If you want to say it, then say it. Don't want to say it, then don't. Why speak so much nonsense?" Feng Hongkong's chiding was not something minor. Feng Shiming trembled all over and promptly said, "Father's lecture is right, this son knows he was wrong. Even though this matter is small, it still relates to our sect's bloodline, so it's still best to report it to Royal Father." "Our sect's bloodline? Since it's related to our sect's bloodline, how can it be a small matter?" Feng Hongkong's gaze concentrated. "What exactly is this matter? Quickly, speak." "Yes? Does Royal Father still remember the name Yun Che this son mentioned 2 years ago?" Feng Shiming asked. "Yun Che?" Feng Hongkong's eyes slightly shifted. "You're talking about that person who released Phoenix Flames in Blue Wind Nation's ranking tournament. Didn't he already die 2 years ago?" Reporting to Father, Yun Che was sealed under Blue Wind Nation's Heavenly Sword Villa at that time, so everyone believed that he was undoubtedly dead. They never expected that he would later come out alive. Once this son obtained this news, he allowed 13th brother to personally leave for Blue Wind Nation to deliver the 7-nation ranking tournament invitation card, with the main purpose being to handle this matter. After 13th brother saw Yun Che, he discovered that Yun Che indeed possesses our Divine Phoenix sect's bloodline. His flame is undoubtedly our sect's Phoenix flame. There's actually such a matter. Feng Hongkong's expression slightly changed. The bloodline was Divine Phoenix sect's core and the biggest taboo. The first rule within the Divine Phoenix sect was precisely that the bloodline could not be leaked out. He said gravely, "Who exactly is it, to actually be this daring enough, and allowed our sect's bloodline to go out? This matter, how was it handled? That Yun Che person, his parents and close relatives, have you investigated them thoroughly?" Feng Shiming replied, "Yun Che's parents and close relatives, this son had already dispatched people 2 years ago to investigate them. But unfortunately, it seems like Yun Che's parents had died not long after he was born to enemies of their family. The one who brought him up is a person named Xiao Lai who is not blood related to him at all. Furthermore, when the truth was exposed, Yun Che had been expelled from his clan. His biological parents ought to have died long ago, or else they would not have not appeared to their son for a whole 20 years. But these are all secondary. About 5 months ago, when 13th brother personally set off for Blue Wind Nation to handle this matter, an accident occurred. Accident? What do you mean by accident? Feng Hongkong tightened his brows once again. Feng Shiming's face began to fill with rage, his voice became conspicuously overcast. 13th brother originally wanted to seize him after confirming that Yun Che possessed our sect's bloodline, but he didn't expect that he would be obstructed. Ultimately, he returned in defeat. Disgraceful. Feng Hongkong fiercely swung an arm. With the Phoenix bloodline, Chenna is extremely talented, and it is hard for him to find a worthy opponent of the same age even in my divine Phoenix nation. In a little, worthless, and lowly nation like Blue Wind, he could completely go against the law and no one would be able to hinder him. With his identity as my divine Phoenix prince and my, Feng Hongkong's son, who had the guts to hinder him. Father, please quell your anger. Feng Shiming immediately replied, this son also did not expect this outcome. Even though that Yun Che is known as the number one of Blue Wind's young generation, he is only at the laughable Earth Profound realm. 13th brother wanting to capture him should have been as easy as blowing off dust. But what he didn't expect was that Yun Che relied on his identity as number one of Blue Wind's young generation to become Blue Wind Emperor Kang Wan, her son-in-law. When 13th brother arrived at the Blue Wind Imperial Palace, it just so happened to coincide with Yun Che and Blue Wind Princess's great wedding ceremony. Since it was an imperial wedding, the imperial family had naturally invited outstanding heroes from all over Blue Wind. Even though the experts within Blue Wind Nation are pitifully few in number, there are still a few thrones. On that day, it appeared that those thrones were all present, and when 13th brother was about to capture Yun Che, the Blue Wind Emperor gave an order out of fury. Under the Emperor's command, those thrones and a few Sky Profound practitioners all moved out. 13th brother is still, after all, too young. Added to the fact that there were only 2 early-stage Emperor Profounds protecting him and them not expecting to face all of Blue Wind's pinnacle experts, they were heavily outnumbered in the end. Believable. Feng Henken immediately flew into a great rage. Under his extreme anger, a current of extremely scorching air instantly permeated the entire Divine Phoenix main hall, and even warped the air substantially. His sword-like brows sunk, as he spoke in an incomparably overcast voice. A little significant Blue Wind Nation have the cheek to be this defiant. To even group together and attack my, Feng Hongkong's son. Where exactly did they get the guts to be this ambitious? This son was also extremely angry when he received the news yesterday, but 13th brother can't really be blamed for this. Retreating in defeat from little nation like Blue Wind is undoubtedly a great shame, so 13th brother did not have the face to tell this to anyone. Added to the fact that Royal Father had been preoccupied with the preparations for the 7-ranking tournament and the Primordial Profound Arc, 13th brother was afraid that this matter would distract Royal Father. As a result, he had always concealed this matter. However, on Blue Wind Nation's side, they are clearly deeply afraid as well since they had sealed off any information. Not even a bit of this matter had spread out in the rumors in these past several months. Furthermore, there is another reason why 13th brother had never reported this matter. Speak. Yun Che had said at that time that he would represent Blue Wind Nation and personally come to participate in this session's 7-nation ranking tournament. Feng Shiming said grimly, so compared to the great matter of preparing to board the Primordial Profound Arc, the small matter of a little Blue Wind brat being dragged until this month is of no consequence. HMPH. Feng Hongkong said furiously. He actually still dares to come here? Probably because he knows he cannot avoid it, so he came to throw away his life. This son also thinks this is so. His resistance that day was perhaps just looking for a few months of peace. Feng Shiming laughed coldly, so Royal Father does not need to get angry over this small matter. If he really dares to come to our Divine Phoenix Empire, he should not think about ever leaving. If he didn't come, this son will just settle this matter personally. After all, like what Father had said, though the person himself is lowly, the matter of our bloodline is still nevertheless a big matter. For this matter, Feng Shiming had indeed only heard of this from Feng Shichen yesterday. But the pretext was vastly different from the truth that had happened that day. On that day, Feng Shichen, as well as his 2 accompanying Emperor Profound bodyguards, were beaten up dirty by only Yun Che alone, and were even stomped on. But he told Feng Shiming that he had been besieged by almost all of Blue Wind's Emperor Profound experts, and retreated in defeat after being heavily outnumbered. At the same time, the 2 bodyguards also testified to this pretext. This was because he, as a Grand Divine Phoenix Prince, absolutely would not admit defeat, and would absolutely not allow anyone to know that he had been beaten into a dog by an Earth Profound realm younger than him, born from a little Blue Wind nation. Because that was an everlasting mark in the depth of his soul, a humiliation that would never fade away for a lifetime. How could he ever allow people to know of this shameful mark? Preposterous, simply preposterous. Feng Hankong tightly clenched both hands as his entire body filled with anger. We originally was somewhat hesitant, but it looks like it is no longer necessary for this little Blue Wind nation to exist. What's the other matter? Feng Hankong said with a hint of anger in his voice. Divine Phoenix Empire had dominated for many years, and its authority reigned the world. The other 6 nations never dared to offend or rebel against the Divine Phoenix Empire in any way. When a Divine Phoenix Prince presented himself in the 6 nations, even the emperors of those nations had to be respectful and submissive. Naturally, he never expected that there would actually be an imperial family who dared to act against his son. And it was even Blue Wind Nation, which had the weakest and smallest national power. This was undoubtedly a challenge to this Divine Phoenix Empire's unparalleled authority and might. The amount of fury he had in his heart could be imagined. But in actuality, Kang Wanhe definitely did not possess the guts to command others to attack a Divine Phoenix Prince. And even if he really had such guts, even if those peak-level experts of Blue Wind were all present, not a single one of these Blue Wind experts would dare to make a move under his command. From beginning till end, Yun Che was the only who acted against Feng Shichen, and he even intentionally prevented others from being involved. Even when Xia Qingyu wanted to help him, she was halted. Because with Yun Che's personality, even when he knew that it was impossible for him to be Divine Phoenix Sect's match, he definitely would not be willing to take it lying down. Instead, Kang Wanhe was the one who spoke out and helped Feng Shichen in the end. But it was really unfortunate. In order to hide his own embarrassment and shame, Feng Shichen had instead aimed the tip of his spear at Kang Wanhe. And this, in the near future, had intangibly accelerated the descent of Blue Wind's calamity. The other matter is related to the 7-nation ranking tournament. Feng Shiming's expression turned heavy. In the past 2 days, this son had received news from the 4 great sacred grounds respectively. On the day of the ranking tournament, all 4 great sacred grounds will be sending personnel to spectate the battlefield. HMPH. In the past 7-nation ranking tournament, at the very most, only one of them would appear. However, the moment the primordial profound arc appears, not one less of the 4 great sacred grounds would be present. Even though they said it was to spectate, in actual fact, isn't it all for the primordial profound arc? We have never even thought of fishing the benefits from their sacred grounds, yet, all they have in their minds is fishing up a big haul from the primordial profound arc that appeared in our Divine Phoenix City. This is really outrageous. Feng Hankong said with an ill voice. If not because he could not afford to offend the 4 great sacred grounds, he would definitely not allow those from the sacred grounds to step onto the primordial profound arc. But this time, the people that are coming are a little irregular. Feng Shiming said. Irregular? Feng Hongkong raised his eyes. Could it be the Saint Emperor, Sovereign of the Seas, Heavenly Monarch and Sword Master are coming personally then? Feng Shiming said. Naturally, these lords of the sacred grounds would not come personally. Coming from the Absolute Monarch Sanctuary is Spiritual Master Ji Yu Kang, and it is reported that he will be bringing a closed-door disciple forward to spectate the matches. According to what was reported, the talent of this disciple is extremely terrifying, and even among the young generation of the sacred grounds, he is still a rarity. He had even shook the sacred grounds once. Coming from the Supreme Ocean Palace is Ji Qianro. What? Ji Qianro? Why is she the one coming? Hearing the name, Ji Qianro, Feng Hongkong actually lost control of his voice on the spot. On his initial face, which was filled with dignity and might, a moment of spasmodic activity actually appeared. About this son doesn't know. If royal father isn't willing to make an appearance, then it's fine to allow this son to receive him. Coming from the mighty heavenly sword region is rinsing sword region 7th elder Ling Kuan. The people coming from these three sacred grounds are still rather normal. However, the person coming from Sun Moon Divine Hall is actually Yi Xinghan. Yi Xinghan? Feng Hongkong's brows furrowed fiercely. The eldest son of heavenly monarch Yi Meixie. Young Hall Master Yi Xinghan? Why is he coming for? This is also the reason why this son has swiftly come to report to royal father. Feng Shiming hurriedly said. The ventures into the primordial profound arc had been fruitless for 10,000 years, although it still piques the interests of the four great sacred grounds. With so many years gone by, their interest had long waned. The people that had been dispatched in these recent years were basically not considered as core figures. The Sun Moon Divine Hall should not have any reason to have Yi Xinghan come forward. It's even more impossible for him to be here to spectate the seven-nation ranking tournament, or to train. Hence, this son thinks that there's an extremely high possibility that the reason why Yi Xinghan is personally attending. Feng Shiming fiercely gritted his teeth, and slowly said. There's a possibility that he's here for Shuai. Feng Hongkong was slightly startled, then, a great rage followed right after. The ground beneath his feet instantly cracked. What did you say? The sudden outburst of anger from Feng Hongkong caused Feng Shiming to shudder for a moment in his heart. However, he did not feel the least bit unexpected. Because the Shuai he brought up was the most important existence in Feng Hongkong's heart. In Feng Hongkong's heart, her importance had even surpassed the entire Divine Phoenix sect. She was Feng Hongkong's biggest landmine. Touching would mean certain death. And to Feng Shiming, it was the same as well. To him, Shuai was the world's most important existence. No matter what anything else was, it could never replace her. He hatefully said. Royal father should have heard of it as well. 10 years ago, Yi Xinghan had succeeded in training in a set of black arts that had long been lost by the Sun Moon Divine Hall. Ever since then, his strength rose explosively, and the training of that set of black arts required the usage of women with extremely high-grade physiques as incubators. Hence, in these recent years, Yi Xinghan had been gathering a large number of women with unique physiques in the shadows. At the same time, he has a lustful personality. There's no woman he doesn't like, and this is fact that the entire world knows of. When Shuai revealed herself for a short moment at the Imperial City 3 years ago, she was instantly titled the world's #1 beauty. At the same time, she possessed the divine soul body as well. It's impossible for Yi Xinghan not to harbor any coveting intentions in his heart. The reason why he's personally coming forward this time, there's a 99% probability that he's here for Shuai. In Feng Shiming's speech, every single one of his words was filled with deep hatred and anger, as though he hated that he was unable to personally rip the body of Yi Xinghan, who was having on thoughts of Shuai, into countless shreds, at that very moment. Except, whenever he brought up the two words, Shuai, all of his anger would suddenly turn into gentleness, as though those two words were the most precious, the most warmest, in his sea of consciousness. Even his eyes were projecting infatuation that could hardly be concealed. Bastard! Feng Hongkong's entire body shook from his anger as he spoke out with explosive rage. He looked at Feng Shiming, and a leg suddenly flew up as he ruthlessly kicked Feng Shiming's lower abdomen. Bang! Feng Shiming, who did not even have the time to react, wildly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his body heavily smashed onto the wall at the back. He held onto his lower abdomen and slowly stood up. Painfully, he said, Royal Father. HMPH. You trash? You still have the guts to call us your royal father? Feng Hongkong pointed at him and roared furiously. Shuai is your biological sister, and you actually dare to harbor lust for her in your heart. We had initially thought that these 2 years had allowed your will to overcome this demonic barrier. We never expected that you had yet to change even the least bit. And you had even uncontrollably exposed yourself in front of us. You have really disappointed us. Feng Shiming knelt on the ground with his 2 knees, and said with a painful expression, "Royal Father. This son admits his mistake. This son knows that these thoughts are ethically forbidden between this heaven and earth, and is simply unforgivable. This son has been putting all his might into suppressing these thoughts these few years, however, the Shui's flawlessness is basically unable to be resisted by sheer will. This son is really unable to do it. And not just this son, 3rd brother, 4th brother, 7th brother, and..." "Shut your mouth." Feng Hongkong's 2 brows straightened vertically, and his entire body released an extremely shocking amount of anger. "Shui is a gem that the heavens have bestowed to my divine Phoenix sect, and is also the biggest hope we have to go shoulder with the sacred grounds in 5,000 years. No one shall think of tainting her. In this world, there's no other man who is worthy of Shui either. Forget about Yi Xinghan. Even if Heavenly Monarch Yi Meixia were to personally attend, he shouldn't hold any intentions of obtaining Shui either. You unfilial sons. The lot of you best suppress all these thoughts that are not meant to be deep in your hearts, for your entire lifetimes. If anyone dares to make any slightest of moves outside of their mere thoughts, even if he's our biological son, we will still personally cripple him." Feng Shiming said in a fluster. "Royal Father, calm your anger. Royal Father, be at ease. This son has never forgotten that he is Shui's brother. This son shall promise Royal Father that I will never do anything that will sadden Shui in my life. If anyone dares to bully Shui, even if this son has to risk his life, he will render him beyond redemption." 3rd brother and the rest have similar thoughts as well. All of us see Shui as the world's most important treasure, so how would we dare to do anything to harm her? Otherwise, even we, ourselves, will not forgive ourselves. It best be that way. Feng Hongkong's anger had yet to dissipate as he turned around, and said coldly, "Shui is currently training at the Phoenix Perching Valley. On the day of the ranking tournament, Shui will be present to spectate as well. After all, it is the first 7-nation ranking tournament since her birth. When the time comes, you'd best stay as far as possible from her. If you dare to approach within 30 meters from Shui, we will break off your legs." "Yes." Feng Shiming lowered his head, his face was filled with dejection. "Take your leave then. We have taken note of the matters you have said earlier. Yes, this son shall take his leave." Feng Shiming stood up, and with careful steps, he walked out of the Divine Phoenix main hall. After leaving far from the Divine Phoenix Great Hall, Feng Shiming stopped his steps. Reaching out his hand to wipe the stains of blood at the corner of his lips, his head rose as he looked towards that gigantic shadow in the sky. His face was constantly interweaved with expressions of infatuation, hatred, and willingness, and decisiveness. "Shui. My Shui. For you, I'm willing to sacrifice everything. Even if you want my life, I will definitely not hesitate either. Wait for the moment I take the throne of Divine Phoenix Emperor, and become the Divine Phoenix Sect Master. Then, no one will be able to stop me from obtaining your everything. Yi Xinghan. If you dare to have any thoughts about Shui, even if you're the young sect master of Sun Moon Divine Hall, your father, will definitely cripple you." At the same time, after experiencing 13 days of journey, his 2 feet finally stepped onto the grounds of the Divine Phoenix City. The air of the Divine Phoenix City evidently carried a trace of searing heat. It was not because the air here was warmer than Blue Wind Imperial City, rather, there was an extremely huge number of profound practitioners who trained in fire attribute profound arts, especially with the Divine Phoenix sect as the head, in Phoenix City where the core grounds of the Divine Phoenix sect. And it's also because it was within Divine Phoenix City which allowed the air here to be filled with an excessive amount of flaming aura. Although Kang Wanha's words had long given Yunche the time to prepare his heart, the bustle here still gave him a small shock. The size of Divine Phoenix City was enough to be 20 times larger than Blue Wind Imperial City. Even if that was the case, the level of density of people was still exceptionally shocking at the borders of the city. Countless of profound practitioners, wearing various types of clothes, were moving about. Among them, most appeared in groups, and seemingly everyone was emitting out an extremely dense and heavy profound aura. From these people, just by casually picking any one of them out, he or she would be at the level of a sect master in Blue Wind Nation. Evidently, among them, a lot of them had came here in advance to spectate the 7-nation ranking tournament. On the few days at the start and the few days before the tournament, the degree of bustle and liveliness would still definitely rise by a few more levels. As expected of the imperial city of Divine Phoenix Empire. The imposing feeling, atmosphere, and the level of strength here naturally cannot be compared on the same grounds with Blue Wind Nation. They are seemingly worlds apart. Yunche could not help but exclaim. He did not disguise himself, because his fame only laid in Blue Wind. In this territory of the Divine Phoenix Empire, there basically wasn't a single person that would recognize him. And there were countless of experts in Divine Phoenix City. The moment his disguise was exposed, it would instead raise their awareness and might bring about a huge trouble. However, when he had to state his name, he would still naturally not use his real name. Look above. In his mind, Jasmine's voice suddenly rang out. Yunche hurriedly raised his head and looked above. In the sky above Divine Phoenix City, there would occasionally be boat-shaped flying objects flying past at extreme speed. These flying objects were separated into highs and lows, or big and small. The shortest one was merely a few meters long, while the longest one could even reach 60 meters. Although Yunche had never seen such things in the Blue Wind Nation, and had only heard about them before, when he was in Azure Cloud Continent, he had seen such things more than a single time. Profound arcs. An extremely luxurious type of flying tool, and had many advantages which could not be compared by many flying profound beasts. However, the price to craft one was extremely expensive, and its source of energy, profound stones and profound crystals, were even more incomparably costly. The consumption amount of profound stones and profound crystals flying a profound arc of a regular size for 2 hours, when converted into profound coins, would entirely be a humongous figure that could dumbfound normal people. Hence, the number of people who possessed a profound arc was extremely small, and the number of people who could bear to use one was even smaller. In Blue Wind Nation, the ones who possessed profound arcs were most probably only the Imperial family and the 4 major sects. However, he had never seen them use one before. However, in this Divine Phoenix City, profound arcs filled up the entire sky. Thus, it was evident to see the strength of their national power. Looking past these profound arcs, in the faraway sky, Yunche was shocked to see a gigantic shadow. As though it was a giant black cloud floating shakily above the blue skies, it obscured a large extent of the brilliant rays of light that were shining down. With its shape and the posture it was adopting to float in the air, it looked just like an odd-shaped profound arc. That is, could that be the legendary primordial profound arc? Yunche said with a low voice, and then, right after, his brows slightly twitched. There seems to be another mistake as well. Royal Father has told me that the size of the primordial profound arc could be compared to the entire Blue Wind Imperial City. However, if one were to look at it from here, it basically did not look that big at all. Could it be that Royal Father was exaggerating his words? HMPH, they weren't the slightest of exaggeration at all. Jasmine said in disdain. Because the height which that profound arc is at, is a full 60,000 meters above ground. Episode 61 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.